The views expressed by our guests are their own and do not reflect the official stance of their employer or any affiliated organizations. Welcome back to the Counsel House podcast. I'm your co-host, Daniel Abramoff, with another great interview today with the Chief Compliance Officer at Shaw Industries, Jolene Russell. I sat down with Jolene to speak about her experience in compliance, working with legal and the business, being able to make sure everyone is working hand in hand and offering value across the board. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Daniel. This is going to be a good time.
So just off the bat, would love to learn a little bit about how your role has evolved over the years, and what are some of the factors that drove different changes that you've experienced?
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. So when I started my career a while ago, it was just before Enron and all of the corporate debacles that were had, and then what became Sarbanes-Oxley. Prior to that, a compliance profession was making highly regulated industries was there. If you think the medical field, but not so much. I come from a retail background historically. So in non-regulated industries, compliance wasn't really a thing. Fast forward, you have corporate scandals, you end up with Sarbanes-Oxley and other regulations to make sure companies are doing what they're supposed to do. And then we end up with compliance functions kind of popping up in both publicly traded and private companies. Um, so when I started my role, it was purely as a result of Sarbanes-Oxley. Companies had to have a code of conduct, they needed to have training in place, and all of the things that you find in the US Sentencing Guidelines. That was 20 plus years ago. Fast forward to today, a lot has changed on the regulatory environment. A lot has changed in the business environment. Is becoming more and more complex. And how I've seen my role evolve is it's not so much making sure that we're checking the box, that we have a code, we have training, we're doing trending analysis, we're doing the things that we need to do to make sure we have an effective compliance program. But it's really how can we partner with the business to make sure that we're building those frameworks and infrastructures at the front end rather than at the back end. Because if anybody worked, especially in a public company in the late 90s, early 2000s, trying to fit a SOX program into an already established organization with the data sets how they were, it was not easy. Coupled with culture changes and everything else, it was the companies had to make a big shift, and it was cumbersome, it was time consuming, and frankly expensive. So now, fast forward to today, what I'm seeing, what I've seen in the past 20 plus years is lawyers, compliance professionals becoming more embedded with the business, becoming partners in the business to help get those structures in place at the front end.
And I think that that's definitely a necessity. To your point, it's sort of you sort of have to learn that lesson over time. What are some ways that you and your teams will immerse yourself into the business?
I think it depends on the organization and the topic that we're working on. So, I mean, compliance spans such a broad area and covers a lot depending on the organization, depending on the regulations that apply. I mean, I can talk about a little bit of what I do day to day. I hit everything that hits a business, whether it's trade compliance, employment practices, what I'll call core compliance programs, ethics and compliance, code of conduct, conflicts of interest, things like that, to whatever, from a compliance standpoint, the business is struggling with or needs. So I partner a lot with our legal team, and then obviously our business partners as well.
And when you create that successful bridge, what are some of the benefits that you've been able to see?
Well, I think the first is we're assuming that you've built a trustworthy relationship. I mean, I can remember, my first early on days as a lawyer. We literally sat in our office, and if somebody needed something, they called us. There was no sitting at the table with our business partners, being involved in the conversations, trying to understand what their strategies were, how they were building them, and then partnering to, bring a different view from a legal and compliance standpoint. Like, hey, have you thought about this? I know you're trying to get here. That's from a legal and compliance standpoint, it is going to require X, Y, and Z. It's going to take a long time. It's going to cost more money. Have you thought about going down this path? We're still going to get you to where you want to go, but it might be down a different path that helps reduce risk to the organization.
And so you had touched on a trust-based relationship, right? That's very, very important. What are some ways that you've found that you've been able to build trust?
I've done a lot of things, things that have worked, things that haven't worked, but I think the first thing is getting to know your business partners as people more than what they do for the company that you work for. That can be as easy as grabbing coffee, taking time outside of like, "Hey, what do you like to do in your free time? What is your family life?" Like, just getting to know somebody on a personal level. Everybody has a life outside of work, and if you focus on what somebody just does, the minute you walk into the door, you're losing really a part of who they come to work as. And then also they get to know you. I'm an open book. I think if you ask anybody that's ever worked for me, what you see is what you get. Um, I've bad, good, or indifferent. That's just how I operate. But what it enables me to do is I don't have barriers in front of me that somebody feels like they have to get past to get to know me. Now, when you get to know somebody on a personal level, it instinctively builds trust because they know something about you.
Absolutely, and you go through enough also challenging situations. That's where the truth really comes out about how your relationship is. And so now that you've built your trust and you identify a risk, how, first of all, how do you identify these risks that maybe the business might overlook, and then how would you go about addressing that?
It depends on the topic. If you have a huge staff, you can have somebody that's dedicated to that. Most organizations don't. Let's not be kid ourselves. So there's a lot of third party solutions out there. I rely heavily on our outside counsel partners to let me know kind of they've got their finger on the pulse to the extent you have a lobbyist on staff or that you have. I mean, those are always good sources too. It just depends on where the organization looks to. Trade associations are another really good way to get intel of what's coming down the pike. But I think the biggest thing that lawyers sometimes miss is an opportunity to take what's coming and understand how it applies to the business. Time and time again, I've seen lawyers they'll just kind of forward kind of what's coming with no context and know how it affects the business. And if I'm the business person, I okay, this is great, but how does it affect me? How does it affect my business? And I think the best lawyers that are the best business partners actually break that down for their business partners to say, here's the change, here's how it impacts you, here's what we need to do. Now, it's not necessarily the lawyers or compliance folks that are responsible for executing whatever that change is sometimes, but more often not. But it's really I think the onus is on us to help our business partners be successful and making sure that they can navigate that change, help being that culture change and change management support system.
And how do you typically go about ensuring that alignment with the business? Is there somewhat of a schedule? You had mentioned getting to know them personally, but do you find that there are programs that benefit both teams from being able to mutually sort of meet in that middle there?
Get on a regularly scheduled call with your HR compliance managers or VPs. Meet with them on whether it's quarterly, twice a year, whatever that cadence is, so that at least you have an opportunity to say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing on the legal side, legal and compliance front. What are you seeing in the business? What do those trends look like? Hey, we've got comp changes coming down." Again, it's just that whatever that regular meeting cadence is with your business partners, find those meetings that are already in existence and leverage those. The last thing that most people want is another meeting on their calendar to talk about more work that they have to do. So if you can start embedding yourself in already established cadences, it just makes everything much smoother.
That makes perfect sense, and you really are keeping everything alive by doing that, and by still continuously getting to know each other and finding different ways you can help each other.
And you become a familiar face. You're not just the person that's calling, "Oh, here comes legal again," or "Here comes compliance again, telling me something else I need to do." It's you're sitting there and, if every, out of 10 meetings you've got something to say or a change once or twice, it's like, "Oh, adding value," or just saying, "Hey," I think another thing that lawyers and compliance professionals are in a uniquely situated in any support function is we get to see across the business, and because of that, we're not siloed with what's going on within a business unit. So we can see how things impact other parts of the business that we need to think about holistically. And I think that is some insight that lawyers and compliance professionals can bring that I don't know that any other, maybe finance is similarly situated to provide those observations.
I agree, and while finance does touches a they do touch a lot of the business, on the legal side, not only are you overseeing everything, you also have the opportunity to really quickly help them with, "Is this possible? Can we do this?" And I think it mutually is beneficial on both sides for relationships to occur, but, very fascinating in terms of keeping business abreast on compliance issues as well. There are a lot of new laws coming out, specifically with tariffs that affect very large organizations like yours across the world. Would love to hear your thoughts on everything going on and if it has affected you, how it has.
If you are importing goods into the United States or exporting into another country, probably paying attention to the new executive orders that have been recently executed, and both in the United States and other countries. So yes, it's hit the company that I work for. And there's been a lot of work that's gone on. Different cross-functional teams have come together to understand, one, what are the new duties? When do they go into effect? What products do they apply to? What is that financial implication to the business, whether we're the importer of record or our customer is? So really understanding what the impact is, so then the business can make a decision on how do we want to address this new cost of doing business. And so we've got, I think there's 2 or 3 different regularly scheduled meetings that I participate in where tariffs is the topic du jour. We do have, again, these are specifically organized around tariffs, how we communicate to our customers, how we communicate internally, making sure that everybody's understanding the same set of information. Because if you look at the news or pay attention to, pick your medium for media, you can there's 10 different versions of the truth out there. So really finding out what actually is the impact to our business based on the products that we're importing and exporting has been it's an evolution, I would say. And we're getting better and better day by day.
It sounds like it. And just from a high level, looking at a career of someone like yourself who you do have to pay attention to laws that come out and how they specifically impact certain areas of the business. This is one that immediately came out that impacts the entire business. So, I mean, it sounds like you all are certainly sharpening your tools over there and really understanding the impacts and potentially maybe finding ways to avoid risks and get more reward.
It's really making sure that the business is prepared for the financial impact that it's going to make.
What are some initiatives in place that enhance the business side of their understanding of what legal and compliance are doing?
So when I'm new to Shaw. I've been here about almost a year and a half now, and when I interviewed for the role, the company just did an amazing job on my whole interview process, but the compliance team that's in place had already done a ton of really good work, one of which is an annual training calendar. So every quarter, we have compliance initiatives that are trained on. Some is mandatory training. There are topics that we add in based on our annual review of kind of the trends that we were seeing in the last year, whether it's sexual harassment, pick your compliance topic. And that training calendar really sets the stage for making sure that our business partners and business associates are getting trained on the things from a legal compliance standpoint that they need to be trained on. FCPA, our code of ethics and business conduct, whatever the topic is, gifts and entertainment. There are some things that are recurring year over year. Cybersecurity is one. At some point, we've got AI that will become a training topic in the future that we're adding in. Surprise to my team if you watch this. I haven't shared that yet. But the topics are really, we've got some core things that happen every year, and then we've got topics that come in based on the needs of the business from what we see gaps are, that will really help inform our business folks to better understand their compliance requirements.
It sounds like a pretty packed calendar and very fascinating actually, the fact that there's so many different obviously all areas of benefit and concern, but just to be able to educate everyone in such a granular way, I think is just so valuable.
We try really hard to make sure that the training is bite-sized so that some people remember what it is they're being trained on. 2 to 5 minutes. It's all web-based training. We're trying to make it as interactive as possible. Just so that, who wants to sit in front of a computer for 3 hours? Some states require sexual harassment training for 3 hours. But to the extent that it's our content, we really try hard to make sure that it's short, sweet, and to the point.
If you're new to in-house, how would you start building relationships with your business partners?
The first thing I would say is get out of your office. sit with the business if they have an open cube or whatever. If you're working remote, it's a little bit different, but if you're in an office space, go sit with your folks. Find the standing meetings that you can, introduce yourself, make those coffee dates or lunch dates to get to know each other one on one. Usually during a new onboarding, everywhere that I've worked, I've done this. I schedule one on one with everybody, all my key division cross divisional partners, and set specific time up so that I can share a little bit about me, learn about them, and really understand what their priorities are. And then share with them a little, once you've had a chance to go through that their first 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days, whatever it's gonna be, come back and say, "Okay, I've learned this about the business. I've got a lot to learn because you're never gonna know everything. Here's how I think I can help you." And really make sure you've got that you're accessible and you're available. Even if they just wanna run something by you that might not be legal, sometimes people just need to kind of get something off their chest or run something by a trusted partner, and more often than not, I think those are the calls that I get. It's not a, "Is this legal or not?" 9 times out of 10, that's not the question. It's more of, "How does this fit the business? Does this create reputational risk? We wanna do X, how can we get there without doing A, B, and C?" It's those types of questions, and by really being present and accessible, you're over time, you'll build those relationships. But I can't say it enough, get out of your office.
Well, I think especially coming back now, everyone's coming back into work. A lot of people don't think about that is that you're there around leaders. You can not only learn from about the business, but how to climb up in the business and the relationships you need to get there.
Once you've built your personal relationship, get to know the business. I think one of the things is I've benefited from in my career is early on at Radio Shack, I kind of raised my hand for, I'll just call it the Radio Shack's version of Six Sigma. And all the lawyers looked at me like I was kind of nuts, like that's not something lawyers do. But for me, it was a way of spending time with the business and learning problem solving skills that every other business unit was having to go through. And then over time, I became train the trainer and got put onto a cross divisional group that's focused on advertising and marketing processes. And it enabled me to learn the business in a way that I never would have learned had I sat in my office and just waited for the call to come say, "Hey, can you look at this contract or this deal?" And again, people got to know me as a person. I learned more about the business that I ever cared for, and I've done that everywhere that I've worked. I work remotely at Shaw, but I've been very intentional, especially the first year I've been here, of coming into Georgia. Our home office is in Dalton, making sure that I'm in person. I come in about every 6 to 8 weeks so that I can start building those personal relationships, and you have to be intentional. If it's a remote company, it's a little bit different, but if you're in town at a conference, meet up with people that you work with, or if everything's completely remote, find the time to have, a 20-minute check-in, whatever it may be, so that you can have those face-to-face interactions.
I think you're so right about that. And going back to the story you gave about joining that program, and the other attorneys are thinking, "What are you nuts?" The reality and I'm sure there's a part of you thinking this could be a little bit scary, but the reality is once you walk into that area where you're not comfortable and you're almost you're ready to learn, and the truth is you will use those experiences to grow more and specifically with the business as well. I mean, I think that it sounds like that was incredibly valuable, and all you did really was take that and share that, which I think is wonderful.
And there's my guess is probably in any organization, there's opportunity for stretch assignments or something. You just have to find the thing that excites you or enables you to learn the business in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, just providing core legal services.
Absolutely, and I do feel like, one of the fun things about doing this podcast is having the conversations about how legal departments find their way into collaboration and partnership with the business and just how important that is. So I really am grateful to have your perspective and your experiences on our podcast, and thank you so much again for taking the time with us.
My pleasure. This has been a lot of fun.